You arrive in late 2016 to a borrowed conference room with glass walls and a view that keeps stealing your attention. The receptionist points out the chargers, the snack shelf, and the printer that prefers to jam on even-numbered pages. You set your bag beside a coil of orange extension cord and a power strip labeled "Do Not Unplug," which experience tells you will be unplugged by noon. A stack of glossy decks waits at your seat, edges warm from the copier, each bundle clipped with a black binder clip and a post-it marked "Ops." Billy McFarland slides in fast, phone in one hand, a felt-tip marker in the other, drawing ideas in the air like he's storyboarding the wind. He promises villas, yachts, charter flights, chef's tables, and curated everything, the words lining up like luggage on a carousel. Ja Rule leans through the doorway, smiling, lending a chorus to the verse. Slides bloom on the wall. Ocean-like glass, a sculptural stage, a logo sitting politely in the corner as if it already owns the room. You flip to the table of contents: site, housing, F&B, transport, medical, security, artists, sponsors, creators. Your pen makes a quiet checklist: water, power, waste, shade, radios, signage, fencing, light towers, manifests, customs. A mood board passes with a faint glue smell, all sunlit palettes and glossy references. Names orbit the center like constellations: Kendall Jenner, Bella Hadid, Emily Ratajkowski, Hailey Baldwin, anchoring a campaign designed to bend algorithms. No one lingers on budgets. The numbers are round and friendly, skipping across the surface like flat stones. Someone asks about villa contracts. A hand waves at a bullet reading "Secured Inventory," and the meeting glides past the question. You write "Verify counts versus contracts" and draw a neat box around "Verify so it can't escape." Your operations workbook opens with tabs for flights, freight, tents, toilets, generators, light towers, shade, credentials, wristbands, waste, med, comms, weather, risk. You color code the tabs: blue for water, yellow for power, green for food, because long stories stay readable when they have colors. On a second sheet, you start a vendor log: company, primary contact, after-hours number, WhatsApp, radio call sign, how they answer at 2 a.m. when a pallet dissolves into rumor. Across the table, a designer rotates an orange square until everyone agrees the exact angle of nothing is correct. The plan is simple to say. The orange square flashes in feeds, the film follows, and the world turns its head. You write traffic spike, support plan, because a lighthouse still needs a dock and a dock needs rope. A production lead passes a shot list for December: drone beach pass, shoreline walk, night bonfire, dawn swim, boat run, and yes, swimming pigs. Next to each shot you pencil permits, liaison, fuel, batteries, and underline fuel twice because boats stop believing in optimism when tanks go dry. A junior whispers where the portable drives are locked and how to coil SDI so the edit bay doesn't scowl. You add labeling tape to the supply list, next to gaffer, zip ties, silver Sharpies, nitrile gloves, and a mason jar for dead AA batteries. The calendar lands like a placemat. 2 spring weekends circled, influencer posts in January, Load in pegged to tides you haven't checked yet. You count backward from first arrivals, place soft holds on freight pickups, hard holds on customs clearance, and a question mark beside villas ready. Slack channels multiply: Ops Island, Ops NYC, creative video, influencer drops, finance approvals, and you favorite them all and mute too because quiet is a tool. The Credentials tab opens. Staff, vendor, talent, media, VIP, GA, lanyard colors planned like a rainbow with a job to do. You add an offline column, QR plus printed alpha lists, because Wi-Fi has its own weather. Security suggests a radio map: TH1 Ops, TH2 Transport, TH3 Medical, TH4 Gate, TH5 Stage, and you add pause, breathe, then speak as etiquette so messages land soft. You sketch the arrivals funnel: airplane door to apron, shuttle to welcome tent, wristband, shade, water, escort to lodging. You circle shade because people forgive lines if they feel protected. The sponsorship slide clicks by, deliverables in cheerful fonts, logo walls, content moments, surprise and delight. And you footnote that surprises need rehearsals. On food and beverage, you list ordinary miracles, potable sauces, ice rotation, hand wash stations, sanitizer, refuse pathing, grey water handling, pest control, and lids that actually fit. Under tents, you add the unromantic pieces: stakes and pullers, ground cloths, guy lines, mallets, spare poles, patch kits, silica gel packets, and duct tape that wishes it were gaffer. You draw a small box named Rain Plan A and a second named Rain Plan B because weather brings friends. Finance slides a sheet of deposit schedules. You date stamp each line and set reminders that won't wake you at 3:11, though you'll wake at 3:11 anyway. The models return to conversation: tone, palette, locations. And the creative lead says the film should feel like a private postcard, accidentally mailed to everyone. You nod and write, postcard feeling, logistics that don't creak, because nothing ruins magic like squeaky hinges. Someone asks about medical, and you list the basics: EMT counts, shifts, AED placement, sunscreen baskets, blister care, hydration salts, and wayfinding that behaves in wind. On transport, you pencil shuttle loop times and add a margin for the unkindness of luggage. A tech mentions microwave backhaul for internet. You type handheld map boards, dry erase, fat markers, because handwriting scales when bandwidth shrinks. You create a risk sheet with 3 tidy lines: capacity honesty, weather drift, late freight, and a 4th line arrives on its own. Villas are not tents. You add a daily stand-up at 9 minutes and a daily downbeat at dusk to reset the board. The printer coughs, the copier warms, and the room smells like paper and a small amount of ambition. You confirm a customs broker and add a second as backup because redundancy is cheaper than panic. In your head, you practice a radio check: ops to gate, 2 shuttles to welcome, copy, and you exhale on the copy because cadence keeps people kind. You start a tiny dictionary in the margin. Lammy means laminate pass, stinger means extension, cans are headsets, pigs are indeed pigs, and SMTWTFS is the hand-drawn calendar you trust. The orange square returns to the screen, just a color behaving like a promise. You tap the square, then tap your list, and repeat a quiet truth. The ground must arrive before the guests. You board a commercial hop south, then a smaller charter plane that smells faintly of jet fuel and fabric softener. The runway on the island is short, its paint lines sun-bleached and cracked. The baggage carts squeal, pulled by a golf cart that seems too small for the job. A clipboard balances on your knee with flight numbers scrawled in pen, margins filled with reminders about vans, coolers, and sunscreen. You step onto the dock. Its boards are warped from last season's storms, nails lifting just enough to catch a shoe. A box of cables thumps against your leg. Inside, adapters rattle like coins. Boats arrive one after another, one with wardrobe trunks, one with light kits, one with cameras packed in foam. Each delivery gets a check mark on your salt-stiff log sheet. The models arrive in small groups. Bella Hadid steps lightly onto the sand, mirrored sunglasses reflecting the crew. Her assistant carries a tote stuffed with sunscreen sprays and phone chargers. Emily Ratakowski follows, headphones hanging around her neck, adjusting a loose sleeve while smiling at the camera crew. Hayley Baldwin waves at the dockhands before slipping behind a stylist who drags garment bags longer than the van roof. Each one has a team, managers, makeup artists, friends with rolling cases taped with initials. You hand out bottled waters pulled from coolers borrowed from a hotel 2 miles away. The bottles sweat instantly in the humid air. A photographer wipes lenses with a cloth pulled from a zip-sealed pouch, muttering about sand grains. A drone lifts overhead, its prop wash scattering your log sheets, forcing you to pin them with a rock. The shot list is long. Swimming pigs, champagne toasts on a fuel-hungry boat, bonfires, shoreline walks, and golden hour silhouettes. You sit with the production manager, drawing 4 new columns: transport, meals, shade, safety. You underline shade because no one brought enough umbrellas. Between takes, you refill coolers, rearrange chairs, and log which vans are already half empty of fuel. Off-frame, the models wait in the sun. Makeup touch-ups dab away sweat. Wardrobe swaps involve garments balanced carefully over rocks to avoid sand. You create a temporary green room under a palm tree. 5 folding chairs, a crate flipped into a table, a towel draped across branches for shade. Someone misplaces a garment bag. A runner traces the path back to the dock, searching under cases, only to find the bag hours later, sitting on a cooler lid, clothes unharmed, ice melted. A hairstylist asks for an outlet. You flip your generator schedule, penciled with wattages, lights off during hairdryers, cameras charging during lunch, drones grounded until later. You keep a separate page for extension cords, listing their lengths and colors, so no one runs off with the only 50-footer. The island outside the frame is rough. Scrub grass scratches ankles, rocks block truck paths. You pace off distances, dock to van, van to set, set to catering, catering to waste bins. You mark arrows in your notebook, arrows that will later matter when hundreds of guests replace this small crew. Golden hour comes suddenly. The photographer calls for silence, and for a moment, even the gulls comply. The models glow against the horizon, water turned to glass, hair catching fire in the light. You stand just beyond the frame, checking your watch. timing how long the vans have before their return fuel runs low. The last shots wrap with applause. There is a toast with sparkling water poured into paper cups. Memory cards are backed up 3 times. Laptop, portable drive, then a second drive labeled with neon tape. The crew collapses tripods, folds reflectors, coils cables into bins that don't quite close. You collect clipboards, strike lines through each completed shot, and initial the page. On the boat ride back, the water glows like the campaign's orange square. One hand grips the railing, the other holds your notes. You circle the word housing 3 times. You underline water twice. Someone jokes about turn-down service in the villas. You nod, though in your mind you see only tents in customs warehouses. The boat rises and falls. The sun lowers. The day folds like a binder clipped shut. Back in New York, the mood has shifted. The excitement from the Bahamas shoot is still glowing on social media, but inside the planning office, the conversations grow heavier. Norman's Cay, the jewel island featured in the promotional film, is no longer available. Local owners, concerned about the reputation of their land, have withdrawn permission. The anchor point for all those promises has quietly slipped away. A map of the Bahamas spreads across the conference table, its creases held flat with coffee cups and phones. Fingertips trace options, from private cays too small for a festival to government-owned parcels too bureaucratic to secure quickly. Eventually, the finger lands on Roker's Point, part of Great Exuma. Larger, accessible, and available, at least in theory. The team nods, but you notice how blank the space looks compared to Norman's Cay. Where the deck once showed villas, this land has scrub grass and half-finished roads. You travel down again to walk the new ground. The airfield is longer, the roads wider, but the soil feels soft underfoot, and drainage is uncertain. The shoreline is beautiful in photos, but dotted with low shrubs and rocks that make staging difficult. A local contact hands you a folder of maps and warns, gently, that the land has no water lines, no permanent sewage, and no shade beyond a few scattered palms. You nod, making notes, feeling how much heavier each logistical tab in your spreadsheet has become. Permits must now be renegotiated. The Ministry of Tourism requires new diagrams, capacity charts, and updated sanitation plans. Emails begin to fill your inbox with subject lines like urgent, staging revisions, and food vendor queries. Officials raise concerns about numbers. You reply with reassurances that sound thin even as you type them. The ministry's letters emphasize infrastructure limits, and you underline phrases like temporary sanitation and storm drainage risk. Every circle of red ink feels like another countdown clock. Back in the office, leadership insists on positivity. Decks shown to investors still list villas as if they are guaranteed. Numbers are polished until they shine. In your notes you write, inventory check, not confirmed, and draw a box around it. But when the slide is presented, the words secured inventory glide across the screen without resistance. You raise your hand, but the response is always the same. Keep the dream intact. The marketing is already locked. The influencer posts are set for January, less than 2 months away. Contracts with celebrities and models specify delivery dates that cannot be shifted. You highlight the phrase, cannot delay, in 3 different colors in your planner. In meetings, the marketing team repeats that the visuals will drive ticket sales. You quietly think about ferry capacity, customs delays, and the fact that the sanitation vendor still hasn't confirmed unit counts. The gap between hype and ground grows wider each week. Meanwhile, invoices arrive faster than payments. Vendors ask for deposits, then call again when wires are slow. A catering lead mentions the challenge of feeding thousands without reliable refrigeration. A freight broker warns that containers could sit in customs for days if paperwork isn't perfect. You copy documents into folders, label them by date, and keep a printed binder because you no longer trust cloud sync in low bandwidth conditions. Each page you add feels like ballast to a ship already tilting. At night, you sketch the site plan on graph paper. Squares for tents, circles for water tanks, arrows for truck paths. You erase and redraw when you realize the trucks will have to back up near the shoreline. You shade in emergency exits with a dull pencil and tape the sheet above your desk. It looks more like a disaster relief camp than a luxury event. The difference between vision and paper grows obvious even before the first guest sets foot on the island. You arrive on Great Exuma with a list of contractors, each name matched to a phone number that doesn't always answer. At the airstrip, men in pickup trucks wait, some with hand-painted company names on the doors, others simply word of mouth. They shake your hand and ask when payment will come. You smile, you nod, you promise updates. In your pocket, the advance checks are still unsigned. The first shipping containers open with a groan. Inside are white disaster relief tents, thin nylon with metal poles, folded and bound with straps. The warehouse smell clings to them, damp cardboard, oil, and mildew. Mattresses follow, stacked in plastic wrap, already damp from rain that leaked through container seams. You write "airing required" on your clipboard, even though the forecast shows more storms. Generators hum on pallets, paint chipped from previous use. One sputters, coughs smoke, and dies before it can be unloaded. You note the serial number, then mark "service" with a heavy line. Portable toilets sit in customs, delayed by paperwork that lists the wrong consignee. Each day they remain there, your sanitation plan loses credibility. You send another email, add another column to your spreadsheet, and brace for the next excuse. Food becomes its own problem. A celebrity chef originally promised gourmet dining, but the contract collapses when deposits fail to arrive. A mass catering company steps in, offering simple menus built on volume. Pallets of bread, cheese, lettuce, and salad dressing arrive. Boxes of styrofoam containers follow. The glossy images from the pitch fade into the reality of sandwiches and paper napkins. You adjust the menu sheet, but the investors still see gourmet. Local workers swarm the site with hammers, drills, and hand tools. They build platforms for tents, haul lumber, and lift heavy cases under the sun. They arrive early, leave late, and often ask at the end of the day if wages will be wired soon. You write down names in a notebook, a list that grows longer than you ever expected. When they ask again, you tell them the funds are processing. You know some may never be paid. Supply runs consume entire afternoons. You count pallets of bottled water, calculate how long they will last, and realize the numbers don't match the ticket sales. You order more, but shipments slip in transit. Ice arrives late, melting before it can be stored. Shade tents collapse in the wind. Every problem feels small until you multiply it by thousands of guests. Then it becomes the kind of problem that can't be hidden. Medical needs linger on the edge of every conversation. A tent has been marked for first aid, but staff numbers remain thin. You schedule double shifts, but exhaustion looms before the guests even arrive. Supplies trickle in: bandages, saline, sunscreen, hydration salts. Still missing are backup generators for lights, a stretcher that fits in the vans, and enough radios to call for help. You note the gaps in red ink, circling them until the page looks bruised. The island itself resists the build. The soil turns to mud after short rains. Trucks sink and require chains to pull them free. Wooden pallets warp in the heat. Screws rust before they are tightened, and canvas grows heavy with salt air. You spend half the day improvising repairs, the other half revising plans. At night, when the tools finally quiet, you walk the perimeter with a flashlight, counting tents, generators, and lights. The silence feels too big for what is supposed to come. January arrives, and with it, the launch of the campaign. On one afternoon, feeds around the world glow orange. Influencers, bound by contract, post identical squares with cryptic captions. Kendall Jenner hints at exclusivity. Bella Hadid shares behind-the-scenes clips from the Bahamas shoot. Emily Ratajkowski and Hailey Baldwin tag their posts with carefully drafted hashtags. The reaction is immediate. Within hours, comments pile up, ticket sales spike, and the office phones ring non-stop. In the planning room, the screens track numbers rising higher than projections. Investors call in rapid succession, each one excited by the surge. The presentation decks they see still show villas, gourmet chefs, and private jets. Revenue projections are updated in bold fonts. The reality on the island: containers stuck in customs, tents still folded, workers still unpaid, remains buried in your private notes. You watch the gap widen between promise and ground. Emails pour in from influencers' management teams. They ask about flight schedules, villa assignments, catering menus, and backstage access. They want to know if private cars will meet them on arrival, if Wi-Fi will be available for streaming, if security will handle fans. You prepare neat itineraries with time slots, vehicle assignments, and confirmation numbers. You print them on heavy paper, though you know most of these details are not yet secured. The paper looks convincing, and sometimes that is enough to quiet questions. At the same time, pressure mounts from investors. Conference calls stretch late into the night, each one demanding more detail. They ask about villa counts, sponsorship agreements, artist confirmations, and insurance coverage. You answer carefully, weaving around the gaps, repeating phrases you have heard from leadership. Everything is moving forward. Contracts are in process. Logistics are under control. When the call ends, you reopen your spreadsheets and circle the sections that are still blank. Your own proposals rarely gain traction. You suggest limiting capacity, reducing ticket sales to match actual housing. You draft a plan for staggered arrivals, allowing infrastructure to catch up. You recommend reducing promised amenities, scaling back to something achievable. Each suggestion is met with silence, then dismissal. The vision must remain intact, you are told. Positivity drives sales, and sales drive investment. Your practical notes stay tucked in the margins, while the official story remains glossy. Weather reports add a new layer of tension. Forecasts predict storms sweeping across the Bahamas in late winter. You order tarps, pumps, and sandbags. You create a rain plan, then a backup rain plan, and you tape them to your wall. Still, when leadership speaks to investors, they show sunny renderings of stages and villas. You listen to the forecasts again at night, noting wind speeds and rainfall totals, while emails from leadership use words like paradise, unforgettable, and historic. Expenses rise quickly. Freight costs increase when containers sit idle. Catering orders double after menus change. Security contractors request hazard pay for long hours. You track every invoice, entering amounts into spreadsheets that grow darker with red numbers. Investor decks, meanwhile, still show profits. Charts are smoothed, totals are rounded, and losses are postponed to future revenue streams. You keep both sets of numbers open, one real, one polished, and the distance between them feels like a canyon. By the end of January, the hype is undeniable. Influencer posts have generated millions of impressions. Articles in glossy magazines praise the vision. Ticket tiers sell out, and waiting lists grow. Yet on the island, the tents remain stacked, toilets remain locked in customs, and the workers still wait for payment. You sit at your desk, the sound of Instagram notifications pinging from the next room, and you underline one word in your notebook: reality. It is April, and the countdown has run out. The first guests will arrive within days. You land on Great Exuma once more, stepping onto the tarmac with a clipboard so worn the corners have curled. Vans wait outside, dusty and running low on gas. The drivers nod at you, but ask again when their pay will clear. You tell them soon, the same word you have been saying for weeks. The site looks half-finished. White tents stretch across the ground like rows of punctuation marks, some secured with ropes, others still flapping in the wind. Mattresses lie stacked on pallets, plastic wrap torn, foam already damp from the latest rain. Workers carry them one by one into the tents, but the count does not match the ticket sales. You circle numbers in your notebook, knowing there are not enough beds. Generators hum along the perimeter, their rhythm uneven. Some sputter, coughing smoke, and demand fuel faster than deliveries can arrive. Extension cords snake across the mud, labeled with tape that has already lost its stickiness. You mark down which cords power lights, which power refrigeration, which are already overloaded. Every hum sounds like a warning. Food preparation lines run under a makeshift canopy. Tables are covered with loaves of bread, blocks of cheese, lettuce still in shipping boxes, and dressing bottles without pumps. Staff slice and portion with borrowed knives. Hands moving quickly, but without coordination. A catering lead mutters about missing coolers. Ice melts before it can be stored. You calculate portions per guest and know the numbers will fall short. Sanitation is worse. Portable toilets finally cleared customs, but not in the quantity ordered. They sit in uneven rows, some not yet secured, others leaning from the wind. A small team handles waste removal, but their equipment looks undersized for the job. You check the count against expected attendance and draw a red X beside the column. The ratio is nowhere near safe. Water delivery is late again. Pallets of bottled water arrive in smaller numbers than promised, while large tanks remain empty. Workers unload boxes by hand, setting them in the sun where the plastic grows hot. You write, "Move to shade," and underline it twice, but there is little shade to offer. You start thinking about rationing before the festival has even begun. Local staff show signs of strain. They work long hours in the heat, many without pay. They ask you in quiet voices if their wages will come. You write down names in the back of your notebook, the list stretching across several pages. The faces blur together, but the question remains the same. You give the same answer as before, soon, but the word feels thinner every time you say it. Billy arrives for a walkthrough. He moves quickly, praising what is finished, waving past what is not. He tells the group that everything looks good, that the vision is intact. Cameras follow, capturing his confidence. You watch from a distance, pen pressed against your notebook, circling the word safety again and again. The site does not match the story being told. You brief your team with steady tones. Guests will need calm guidance, clear signage, and reassurance. Radios must stay charged, even if it means shutting down lights. Shuttle loops must be ready, even if fuel runs low. You mark helicopter landing zones for emergencies, though no medical helicopters are confirmed. Each decision feels like tightening a rope that is already frayed. Night falls, and the site glows with uneven light. Generators buzz, tents rustle, and the ocean pounds against the shore. You walk the perimeter once more, counting tents, tracing cords, and checking waste bins. The silence of the island between sounds feels enormous. You close your notebook, pressing the cover flat against the pages. The countdown is nearly over. The first planes touch down on Great Exuma. Guests step onto the tarmac, carrying designer luggage and high expectations. Many have been promised villas, private chefs, and curated experiences. They board buses that bounce along uneven roads, windows rattling as drivers navigate potholes. The ride grows quiet as the scenery shifts from resort advertisements to half-built structures and rows of white tents. At the site, the welcome tent struggles with the flow. Check-in tables are covered with clipboards, laptops, and wristbands. The Wi-Fi drops out within minutes. Staff resort to paper lists, flipping pages in the humid air. Guests wait in long lines under the sun, fanning themselves with boarding passes. A few ask where the villas are. Others ask for drinks. The answers are vague, and patience begins to fade. Luggage piles up in the mud, tagged but unorganized. Staff attempt to load bags into trucks, but many are misplaced, with owners wandering among stacks searching for initials. Radios crackle with half-heard messages, batteries already running low. You walk the rows, giving calm instructions, but each step feels like trying to hold water in your hands. Food service opens in the afternoon. Guests are handed styrofoam boxes containing bread, cheese, and a small salad. Some stare in disbelief, others take photos. Within minutes, images of the meals appear on social media, spreading faster than any official update. The glossy promises collapse against the reality of sandwiches under a plastic canopy. The phrase "gourmet experience" fades into silence. As evening approaches, the tents begin to fill. Rain falls briefly, soaking mattresses that had not yet been moved inside. Guests find cots without sheets, pillows missing, or tents with broken zippers. Some wander back to the buses, asking for transfers. Others try to laugh, treating it as an adventure. The mood shifts quickly once the sun sets and the lighting proves insufficient. Water grows scarce. Pallets delivered earlier in the day are already gone, and distribution slows. Some guests share bottles, others argue over the last cases. Security staff attempt to keep order, but are overwhelmed by numbers. The radios call for more water, more ice, more calm. Each call ends with the same reply. Supplies are limited. Help is delayed. Medical staff see their first cases within hours. Guests arrive with heat exhaustion, dehydration, and minor injuries. The tent fills quickly. Supplies dwindle faster than expected. Bandages gone, saline nearly empty, radios without spare batteries. You walk through, checking lists, and know the numbers will not hold through the night. Social media amplifies the collapse. Photos of soaked tents, cold sandwiches, and stranded luggage trend worldwide. Influencers discreetly leave the island, escorted to private flights before the chaos deepens. Guests left behind scroll through feeds on failing phone batteries, realizing that the world already sees the festival as broken. The dream has unraveled in real time. By midnight, the site feels unstable. Guests cluster in groups, some still hopeful, others demanding answers. Security forms lines, but their presence feels thin. Staff huddle near radios, repeating updates that sound more like apologies. You write a final note in your book. No buffer left. The words press deep into the paper, leaving grooves on the next page. By morning, the announcement spreads across the site. The festival is cancelled. Guests gather near buses and shuttles, clutching luggage or nothing at all. Some demand immediate flights home. Others sit quietly, exhausted by a night of rain and noise. You move among them with a steady voice, guiding groups toward transport. Calm becomes the only tool left to offer. Buses fill quickly, engines straining on muddy roads. The ride to the airport takes longer than expected, slowed by traffic and confusion. At the terminal, lines stretch across the floor, guests pressed against walls, waiting for flights that may not arrive. Airport staff try to keep order, but the building grows hot and crowded. You stand near the entrance, directing people towards shade when possible, repeating the same instructions until the words blur. Back at the site, local workers gather. They ask about wages, pointing to notebooks where hours are carefully logged. Some describe weeks without pay. Others mention money borrowed to buy fuel or tools. You write down names, pages filling with promises you cannot guarantee. Their faces carry a mixture of fatigue and disbelief. The silence after each answer weighs heavier than the words themselves. News travels faster than transport. Images of tents, meals, and stranded guests circulate worldwide. Headlines describe disaster, fraud, and betrayal. Late-night hosts make jokes. Commentators frame it as a cautionary tale. On the island, those jokes feel distant. What you hear instead are radios crackling, buses reversing, and the low sound of people asking what will happen next. The Bahamas Ministry of Tourism issues a statement noting concern for guests and workers. Permits are reviewed. Officials emphasize that requirements had not been met. Their language is formal but clear. Expectations were ignored. Responsibilities were not fulfilled. You copy the statement into your notes, circling words like capacity, sanitation, and safety. The warnings had been there from the beginning. In the weeks that follow, lawsuits multiply. Class actions are filed in New York, claiming fraud, breach of contract, and misrepresentation. Influencers are named in complaints, asked to explain their paid posts. Kendall Jenner later settles one case, returning a portion of her fee. Models and managers post disclaimers, saying they too were misled. Court documents pile up, each page tracing the gap between promise and ground. Investigations deepen. The SEC reviews financial statements, finding fabricated revenue and falsified documents. The Department of Justice files charges. In testimony, vendors describe unpaid invoices, workers describe unpaid wages, and investors describe presentations filled with guarantees that never existed. Billy McFarland pleads guilty to fraud. He is sentenced to 6 years in prison and ordered to repay more than $20 million. Each hearing echoes with the same theme: promises without foundations. Bankruptcy proceedings reveal creditors in long lists: caterers, trucking companies, security firms, airlines, beverage distributors, small local shops. Each line item represents work done without compensation. Bahamian workers, many of whom built the site with their hands, submit claims that remain unpaid. Their testimony circulates online, voices describing long days under the sun, waiting for wages that never arrived. The contrast between their stories and the original glossy campaign could not be sharper. Months later, documentaries begin to appear. Footage of the shoot with models, behind-the-scenes calls, and guest arrivals are replayed. Interviews describe both the dream and the collapse. Viewers watch from their homes, shaking their heads at the contrast between Instagram posts and real conditions. The festival becomes a symbol, not of music, but of unchecked hype. You review your old notes. The margins are filled with circles around words like water, toilets, safety, staff. Each circle looks heavier than the text itself. You close the notebook and feel the weight of unfinished pages. The lesson is clear, though simple. Promises must meet reality. Without foundations, every vision collapses. The island grows quiet again. Tents are gone, pallets removed, signs dismantled. Only the wind and the tide remain, steady and indifferent. You stand once more at the shoreline, breathing deeply. The hype has vanished. The noise has ended. What lingers are the people who worked, the guests who traveled, and the story now carried elsewhere. You turn from the water, carrying forward one truth: the ground must always come first. Working for Fyre Festival sucked because the promises were bigger than the ground could hold. Luxury was sold in glossy images, while basic infrastructure, water, toilets, power, beds, lagged behind, and every plan bent under the weight of what had already been advertised. The site kept changing, timelines kept shrinking, and small mistakes multiplied in island conditions. Containers stalled in customs, generators failed, tents leaked, and every workaround stole time from the next emergency. There were never enough buffers, only new versions of soon. Pressure streamed in from investors and marketing, while on-the-ground facts said slow down. Capacity wasn't matched to reality, but the message stayed upbeat, leaving staff to soften bad news, stretch thin resources, and carry stress that didn't show up on any deck. Vendors and local workers kept the place moving with sweat and borrowed tools, often without timely pay. Staff lived between radios and spreadsheets, doing triage instead of logistics, and learning that reputational damage arrives faster than relief. Aftermath made it worse. Lawsuits, investigations, unpaid invoices, and footage replayed everywhere. The people who tried to make it safe and workable were left sorting receipts, explaining decisions, and wondering how early warnings turned into background noise. If there's one lesson to carry forward, it's that promises must meet the ground. Tell the truth about capacity, protect buffers, pay people on time, and cancel early if the plan can't be made safe. For now, let your shoulders drop, let your hands unclench, and let your breath grow slow and even as you drift toward rest.